the tragic story behind this terrifying photo. 17 days after the worst volcanic explosion in US history, a discovery was made that was so tragic that it ended up being published in an issue of National Geographic. But before we discuss what was discovered, let me give you some context as to what led up to the discovery. Robert Emerson Landsburg was born on November 13th, 1931 in Seattle, Washington. By the time he was 48, he had settled in Portland, Oregon, and Robert had become an avid photographer. Now, in 1980, Robert had been presented with an interesting conundrum. He had the opportunity to take pictures of a lifetime. In fact, all anyone could talk about was this exciting event happening in Washington. A few months earlier, on March 27th, forest workers in Cascade Range, which is a popular mountain range in Washington, would hear what sounded like a small explosion in the area. Now, due to private timberlands and private road building in the area, workers assumed it was nothing out of the ordinary, but soon it was realized that a once dormant volcano that had been asleep for over 100 years had just become active. And this is precisely the opportunity that had presented itself to Robert. He heard about this volcano on the newspaper, on TV, on the radio, and Robert really wanted to document this volcanic activity. Warnings had been raised by the governor of Washington for people to stay away from the area, but these warnings only further enticed Robert. And as soon as he was able to, Robert made the 1.5-hour trip to the Cascade Range. Now, the sheer size of this volcano cannot be comprehended unless you see it in real life. Mount St. Helens, which is the name of the volcano, stood just under 10,000 feet tall. Robert had arrived at Cascade Range around April and had been obsessively taking pictures of Mount St. Helens. He was fully invested in documenting the active volcano to the point where he started going on hikes to find various different vantage points to capture the volcano. During his expeditions, Robert would feel trembles coming from the ground as several earthquakes would occur sporadically throughout his visit. Scientists studying the active volcano would warn local authorities to evacuate the area, but despite the fact that Mount St. Helens was actively erupting, albeit these were smaller eruptions of steam and gas, emergency agencies weren't really too convinced that anything serious was going to come of this. Eventually, scientists convinced authorities to set up a safety perimeter known as a red zone and a blue zone, where only scientists and authorized personnel were allowed to occupy. This safety perimeter was between 6 to 8 miles from the volcano summit. But Robert had managed to enter the safety zone to continue his documentation of Mount St. Helens. Robert was snapping pictures as he had been doing for the past several weeks. At this point, the volcano hadn't erupted for the past 4 days. And on this particular day, around 8:32 a.m., Robert felt a deep tremor underground, which was not unusual, but this one was much stronger than any of the other tremors he'd felt before. Then, about 20 seconds later, a tremendous cracking sound was heard. Robert's head snapped in the direction of the sound, and to his horror, he saw that the volcano had erupted. But this was not a regular eruption. Scientists initially predicted that the volcano would erupt in a traditional vertical manner, where the ash and gas explodes directly above the volcano, and ensuing hot rock debris and magma would affect the surrounding area of the volcano closer to the mouth. But remember that bulge I spoke about earlier? Well, in this case, unfortunately for Robert, the magma trying to escape for the volcano hit a block trying to exit directly through the mouth of the volcano. So the pressure and buildup underneath the volcano forced the magma to change direction, and that was towards the north face of the volcano, which was what caused the bulge on the side of Mount St. Helens. The earthquake that had occurred moments before caused a huge portion of the north face of the volcano to break off, which triggered a massive volcanic explosion. Robert could do nothing except stare in horror as a massive pyroclastic flow burst through the side of the volcano and started plummeting towards him. For those of you who do not know, a pyroclastic flow is a hot, fast-moving cloud that is made up of ash, gas, and volcanic rock debris. These flows can move hundreds of kilometers in seconds. Now, you might think that the ash and gas is what would suffocate you, or maybe you get pummeled by rocks, which isn't technically wrong, but it's actually the heat that will kill you. Pyroclastic flows can reach temperatures of up to 1,000 degrees Celsius. There is also virtually no way to escape a pyroclastic flow if you are in its path. And unfortunately Unfortunately for Robert, he knew this. He could see this enormous dark grey cloud of ash and boiling volcanic material moving towards him at unbelievable speeds. Robert then calmly took a few more pictures of the eruption, completing his documentation of this historical event. He then took the film out of the camera, placed it in its case, and put it in his backpack. And after surrendering to his fate, he then curled up around his backpack as a last-ditch effort to preserve the photos by using his body as a shield as he waited for the inevitable. As the pyroclastic flow sped towards Robert, he likely felt the air around him heating up rapidly and would have struggled to breathe as the hot gases damaged the linings of his lungs. His skin would have begun to rupture and blacken due to the severe heat. His clothes would have been burnt off of his body, and if he was wearing any metal jewelry, it would have seared itself into his skin. Robert Landsburg was essentially boiled alive. In total, 57 people were killed by this eruption, which is considered to be the deadliest volcanic eruption in US history. Robert's body would be found 17 days later, and miraculously, his sacrifice did end up preserving his film. His pictures would later be published in the 1981 January edition of National Geographic. And that's all from my video today. If you guys like these kinds of videos, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there.